Hello, outrageous sisters. Success experts say that who we spend our time with is a key influence on our own happiness and whether we succeed or fail. And so, experience shows us that happy, successful people spend most of their time with other people who are happy and successful. So, we're actually going to start today's video by talking about how we can begin to identify those people that inspire us and lead us to better things, and to notice the people who pull us down. So this exercise will sort of bring this information to the forefront where you're naturally going to just start to make some different choices about who you're spending your time with. And I do hope that you'll actually try this exercise, right? Because it's one of my favorite coaching tools, and it gives us an empowering way to review our relationships. So that includes partners and colleagues, friends and family, and to help us make conscious, powerful choices that leave us feeling better about ourselves and our lives. So we're going to start by making a list of the 20 people that you spend most of your time with. And against each of them, so make a big list, against each one, put a plus sign if you feel good about yourself after spending time with them. And these are people you enjoy spending time with. They're happy and successful in their own way. These are people that after spending time with them, you somehow feel better. Then I want you to put a minus next to the ones that you find after spending time with them that you somehow feel less. Perhaps you feel smaller or less happy, or you have less energy. And these might be people where you worry or stress unnecessarily before or after seeing these people. And you probably already have a gut feeling who these people are, right? So next to that plus or minus, I want you to add a score. So from a -5 to a +5 for each person to kind of identify how much of an effect they have on you. And then for the people who have the highest and the lowest scores, we can begin to identify an action. But before we kind of have to ask ourselves a few questions. So the first would be, are there any surprises, right? What are the scores for the people you spend most of your time with? Are you generally spending time with pluses or with minuses? How much time are you spending with high scoring 4s and 5s on your list? And what about the draining 4s and 5s? What other patterns do you notice? So once you do that, now you can decide kind of on next steps. So the first would be to consider those plus relationships. How can you spend more time with them? If you don't have any 4s and 5s on your list, who can you think of who could fill that slot? How else can you find and develop positive relationships? I call these mountaintop relationships, people who meet you at the summit instead of you dragging them up with you from the valley. And they sharpen you and they help you become who you are. So once you've done that, then I want you to consider the minus relationships. So in theory, these are people to try and spend less time with. But, any healthy relationship has rough patches. And it's not necessarily the right thing to just discard someone simply because times get tough or they trigger emotions in you. So you want to ask yourself if this is a difficult person for you or if this is a toxic relationship. So difficult people are actually an opportunity for us to grow. When we encounter somebody who's a difficult person, we need to check in with our own crap, right? We need to ask ourselves if we are owning our choice to be in relationship with that person. So for example, let's say you have a shitty boss who treats all his employees poorly, disrespecting their boundaries, has a lack of professionalism, right? You are continuing your relationship with that person by continuing in that job. So complaining about that person is a lack of ownership, right? You don't have to be there, but you are choosing to be. You're the CEO of your life. You absolutely do not have to remain in that job or in that relationship. The next thing we should try to do is exercise maturity. Be curious, empathize. Assume someone has something else going on that is causing them to be difficult. Right? Don't try to change them, but instead, try to inspire them with your own actions, right? Embody and model the energy that you hope that person will have. Lead by example. And also be a super sleuth that sort of sets emotional reactions aside and gets down in the trenches with analyzing the situation. So part of being an evolved woman is looking at your own thoughts about that person and how they are creating your emotions. You have the ability to grow from difficult relationships instead of just throwing them out or dismissing them as toxic. And by slowing down and analyzing how we feel, afraid, distrusting, anxious, sad, resentful, right? We recognize the emotions that those thoughts are creating. And in turn, we take back our power. We can always choose a different thought. So let's turn to toxic relationships and not just difficult people. Sometimes toxic relationships are structured around a wound or a grievance that just needs to be brought into the open and discussed. But in situations where that isn't happening, ask yourself where you are giving your power away. How do you allow them to drain and deplete you? What steps do you need to take to establish boundaries and preserve your self-esteem? What are the fears that keep you from setting or expressing or holding your boundaries? And why are you hanging on to that fear? What's the payoff? How is, feeding the fear of having boundaries keeping you stuck in that toxic relationship? So Brene Brown says, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. Maybe you have frankly outgrown people. Is it time to just let go and move on? And for relationships that you may still want or need that are currently unhealthy or energy depleting, how can you change how you spend time with them so that you still feel good about yourself? We can't change other people's behavior. We can only change our own. So how can you behave, spend less time or spend time differently with people to boost your relationships? As you work on and change yourself, you may notice people reacting to you differently, or we may see people differently. Right? This is all a normal part of our growth. And we may need to make a decision on whether we still want these people in our lives. And if so, how? So I'll leave you with a question to ponder and to maybe journal about if you're a journaler. So visualize your higher self, your future self, surrounded by her circle of trust. Who is there? How does it feel? And how does that compare to your current circle? Sisters, thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts, so drop them below or reach out to me directly. Go be outrageous.